Greetings, friend. Thank you sincerely for taking the time to watch my video. Your attention truly matters. And if you choose to subscribe to my channel, I'll be even more grateful. So let's get started. My name is Wilson, and what follows is a personal account, one that changed everything. There are events in life that split time into before and after, those defining irreversible moments. One such moment came during a dinner visit when I happened to catch a conversation between Rachel and her mother. It wasn't just upsetting. It was a revelation that tore apart the image I had clung to. The woman I had asked to be my wife, the one I thought was walking with me toward a shared future, had seen our relationship as a backup plan rather than a mutual promise. Rachel and I had been in a relationship for 2.5 years by the time I gathered the courage to propose. Over those years, I believed we were slowly building something authentic, a partnership based on love, trust, and growth. She was an elementary school teacher, and I worked as a systems analyst at a mid-sized regional bank. We were introduced by a mutual friend who thought we'd get along. Our initial conversations flowed naturally, and our bond began to strengthen from there. Things developed smoothly between us. Nothing felt rushed or forced. Within just a few months, I felt convinced we were meant to be together. Rachel had this innate warmth that made everyone feel at ease. She was intelligent, empathetic, and gifted with children in a way that deeply moved me. She often expressed her desire to have a big family one day, pouring her love and energy into raising children in a nurturing home. My love for her didn't arrive in a thunderclap. It built over time, subtle and steady, like slipping into sleep without realizing you've gone under. Every time we spoke about our future, I felt a surge of anticipation about the life we could build. Maybe I had fallen harder or earlier, but to me, she was woven into every vision of what lay ahead. Though we were serious, we continued living in separate apartments, which made sense for our schedules and allowed the relationship to mature gradually. Rachel shared a 2-bedroom unit with a college friend close to her school, while I lived in a modest 1-bedroom near the outskirts of the city's financial hub, affordable yet conveniently located for work. We were about 20 minutes apart by car, and over time we established a rhythm, usually spending 3 to 4 nights a week together, depending on how busy we were. Sometimes I stayed at her place, other times she came to mine. We exchanged keys, kept essentials at each other's apartments, and had interwoven our social circles in a way that made us feel deeply connected. Everything pointed to a shared life ahead. I had been thinking about proposing for months. I took my time to plan everything with intention: the date, the location, and especially the ring. I wanted the moment to reflect the depth of my feelings and the seriousness of my intentions. After a long search and multiple visits to jewelers, I chose a timeless solitaire ring with a 1-carat diamond. It was a significant expense for me, but it symbolized everything I hoped to offer her: stability, love, and commitment. The proposal took place on a crisp October evening. I knelt down, heart racing, and her reaction was more than I dared to hope for. She said yes without hesitation, threw her arms around me, and her smile lit up the moment. That memory stayed with me, a confirmation that we were on the same page and moving forward together. As the excitement of the engagement began to settle into reality, I brought up the idea of visiting her parents to share the news in person and formally ask for their blessing. Rachel had always spoken about how much her family's approval meant to her, and I wanted to honor that. She was thrilled by the suggestion, and we arranged to have dinner with her family the following weekend. Over the course of our relationship, she had described her parents as a loving couple married for over 3 decades, supportive of her ambitions and deeply committed to their children. They lived in a quiet suburb about an hour from the city, in the same house where Rachel had grown up. Meeting them as her fiancé filled me with nerves, but also hope. I wanted to present myself as someone steady, genuine, and devoted to their daughter. I spent extra time choosing my clothes and preparing what I wanted to say. I hoped to convey the respect and seriousness with which I approached this new chapter. During the drive to her childhood home that Sunday afternoon, Rachel was full of energy, sharing stories, laughing, and glowing with anticipation. Though she had already told her family about our engagement over the phone, this would be our first in-person celebration. It was clearly meaningful to her. Her parents' home was just as she'd described, warm, inviting, and steeped in family history. The walls displayed a mosaic of photographs, children's artwork, and cherished keepsakes. Her parents greeted us with open arms and kindness that helped ease my anxiety almost immediately. Rachel's brother and his wife were there too, along with their 2 young children, who seemed to be the center of Rachel's universe. The evening had an air of comfort and closeness, filled with laughter and effortless conversation. Everyone appeared genuinely happy to be together, and I felt grateful to be welcomed into that space. Her family's questions were thoughtful and kind, never prying. They asked about my work, my upbringing, and what I envisioned for the future, but always in a tone of support. They shared heartwarming stories from Rachel's childhood that gave me even deeper appreciation for the person she had become. Everything about that evening seemed to reinforce the picture I had already formed of her life. Grounded, full of love, and sincerely authentic. From the moment the evening got underway, Rachel appeared relaxed and genuinely content. It was clear she was proud of how effortlessly I was fitting in with her family and how warmly they had welcomed me into their lives. Every now and then, she'd look over and flash a smile that needed no explanation. She was happy I was there as her fiancé and excited about the life we were starting to create together. Dinner itself was a reflection of her mother's culinary skills and the family's tradition of treating mealtimes as a chance to connect and celebrate. Conversation flowed naturally, drifting from current events to well-worn family anecdotes, eventually landing on the details of our upcoming wedding. When the main course had been cleared, Rachel's mother stood and excused herself to get the dessert she had specially prepared. She asked Rachel to join her in the kitchen, a moment that felt warm and familiar, like a quiet mother-daughter ritual, while the rest of us stayed at the table deep in conversation. While they were gone, the rest of us chatted about everything from our jobs to local politics and the complexities of raising children today. After a few minutes, I realized I needed to use the restroom, so I leaned toward Rachel's brother and discreetly asked where it was. He gestured toward a hallway just beyond the kitchen, letting me know the guest bathroom was near the back of the house. I stood, thanked him, and followed the hallway as he'd described. Sure enough, the bathroom was just past the kitchen, and because of how the house was laid out, I had to walk fairly close to the kitchen entrance. As I passed, I could hear Rachel and her mother speaking quietly while preparing dessert, but I thought little of it. It sounded like a private exchange, nothing unusual. I didn't take long in the bathroom, not wanting to be gone too long. On my way back toward the dining room, I again came near the kitchen. This time their voices were more distinct. I had intended to offer to help before returning to the table, but just as I approached the doorway, I caught a sentence that stopped me in my tracks. Rachel's mother asked, gently, almost conversationally, what her daughter intended to do about the other man she had brought home only a month ago, now that she was engaged to me. The way she posed the question, calm and unhurried, gave the impression this wasn't the first time the subject had come up. It didn't sound accusatory, but it cut through me all the same. The implication was unmistakable. Rachel had recently been involved with someone else, someone her mother clearly knew about, and now her engagement to me seemed to hang in the balance. What came next erased any doubt. Without missing a beat, Rachel told her mother that she was essentially just keeping things going with me for now, that our relationship was not meant to last. She admitted that if the other man proposed, she would leave me without hesitation. He was the one she truly wanted. Her words were cold, unfeeling. The way she spoke about me, as if I were just a temporary fixture in her life, landed like a punch to the gut. I felt frozen, blindsided. This was the woman I had asked to marry me, the one I believed had chosen me wholeheartedly. And yet here she was, speaking like I was nothing more than a convenient option, someone to pass the time with until her real future came calling. Everything I thought we were building, our connection, her love, our shared plans, was torn apart in a heartbeat. In that moment, I saw the truth. What I believed to be the start of a lasting partnership was, to her, a contingency plan. I was the fallback, the safe choice in case her preferred future didn't materialize. Every memory we'd made, every moment of intimacy or laughter now felt hollow, just part of a performance hiding her true intentions. I backed away from the kitchen quietly, overwhelmed and unsure how to react. I couldn't confront her in front of everyone, couldn't bring myself to create a scene in the middle of her family's home. More importantly, I knew that if I tried to speak, I might not be able to hold myself together. As I passed the dining room, I offered a quiet nod and a forced smile, pretending I was simply stepping outside for a moment. No one stopped me or asked questions. They seemed to assume I needed to make a call or get some air, exactly the impression I hoped to leave. I walked out to my car, got in, and sat there in silence, trying to process the emotional wreckage of what I had just overheard. The drive back was a blur. My thoughts spiraled, lost in disbelief and grief. It felt as if I had been living in a beautifully constructed lie, convinced I was loved, certain we were planning a real future, only to learn that none of it had been sincere. The ring, the wedding, every vision of our life together had been built on deception. About 30 minutes after I left, my phone rang. It was Rachel. Her voice carried a tone of mild concern. She said they'd thought I had stepped outside for a quick call or some fresh air, but started to worry when I didn't return. She explained that they had looked through the house and even in the yard, but hadn't been able to find me. She didn't sound alarmed, just confused. Clearly, she hadn't yet figured out that I had heard everything. I couldn't bring myself to explain. The truth was too heavy, and I knew I wouldn't be able to speak without unraveling. So I said nothing. I ended the call without offering any answers, unable to pretend for even a second longer. Overhearing that conversation shattered me. I was emotionally wrecked, far too broken to endure the inevitable confrontation Rachel's call would bring. In the days that followed, her messages flooded in, texts and voicemails filled with confusion, concern, and a growing sense of dread. At first, she just wanted to know why I had left so suddenly. But as time passed and I didn't reply, her concern turned into panic. It became clear to her that this wasn't a misunderstanding or a delay caused by work or family matters. Something much deeper had been broken. I chose silence for several days. I needed time to absorb what I had uncovered and figure out how I could possibly move forward from it. Hearing her admit, in what she thought was a private moment, that she was keeping me as a backup while she waited for another man's proposal had completely dismantled my trust in her. I couldn't speak to her, not until I had decided what my next step would be. Eventually, I found the strength to return her call. I told her, with finality, that I didn't want to see her again. She demanded to know what had changed, why our engagement had unraveled so suddenly. I told her the truth. I had heard the entire conversation she had with her mother that night in the kitchen. The moment I repeated her own words back to her, everything about her demeanor shifted. She went from confused and concerned to panicked and defensive. She started backtracking, claiming I had misunderstood her, that she was only speaking in abstract terms, or that the context had been misinterpreted. She scrambled for an explanation, saying she was simply anxious about our future and voicing fears she didn't actually believe. She insisted she loved me, that she still wanted to marry me. But I couldn't accept any of it. The words she had spoken were clear. She had treated me as a second choice, someone to settle for if the person she really wanted didn't come through. No amount of rationalizing could change the truth of what I had heard. I told her directly that the engagement was over. I had no interest in building a life with someone who saw me as a backup plan. The trust that had once held us together had been completely destroyed, and no amount of explanation could restore what had been lost. Now that I knew how she truly saw me, there was no path forward. She didn't give up right away. For days, she continued to call and message me, sometimes apologizing, sometimes justifying, sometimes begging. But the more she reached out, the more obvious it became that she wasn't sorry for the betrayal itself. She was afraid of losing the security I represented. Her desperation wasn't about love. It was about losing her safety net. And the more she tried, the more clearly I saw that. Ending our engagement was more than emotionally painful. It was logistically brutal. I had to take back the ring and return it, a gesture weighed down by sadness and tension. I had to inform friends and family that the wedding was canceled, each conversation reopening wounds and reminding me of the future we'd once planned, a future that had now vanished. There were also the practical steps of disentangling our lives. I had to collect my things from her place and return hers from mine. The process felt like dismantling a life we had spent more than 2 years building. Her roommate was present during the exchange. She clearly sensed that something significant had occurred, though she didn't know the full extent of it. But the emotional fallout lasted far longer than the logistics. Realizing that someone you trusted so deeply had never been honest about their intentions changes you. It warps your understanding of love, commitment, and vulnerability. I started therapy, trying to make sense of everything. How I had missed the signs, how someone I loved could be living a lie right beside me. Through therapy, I began to see that people capable of such deception often excel at maintaining appearances. They know how to perform affection and commitment, even when their hearts are elsewhere. Rachel had accepted my proposal while secretly hoping for another man to choose her. That spoke volumes about who she really was, and about how carefully she had concealed that part of herself. I came to terms with the fact that nothing I did, or could have done, would have changed the outcome. When someone is committed to keeping their options open while presenting themselves as all in, there's often no visible trace of their duplicity. This experience taught me to recognize the signs of genuine commitment, and the painful contrast between being genuinely loved and merely being convenient. Rachel found comfort in what we had, so long as it fit her needs. But a real partnership requires more than comfort. It demands honesty, loyalty, and shared purpose. Her willingness to accept my ring while secretly waiting for another future revealed a selfishness and a dishonesty that would have destroyed us eventually. Better now than later. As agonizing as it was, discovering the truth before the wedding saved me from a marriage built on deception. I often revisit that night at her parents' house. Had I not overheard that conversation, I might have walked into a life with someone who never truly chose me. The moment I heard her say she was managing me told me everything I needed to know. She didn't know I was there. She had no reason to filter her words. And it was in that unguarded moment that I heard the truth. Her real truth. Sometimes, the most honest revelations don't come from direct conversations, but from what people say when they believe no one is listening. Those words ended our relationship in an instant, but they also freed me. As painful as the realization was, it gave me the clarity I needed to walk away from someone who never valued me for who I was. That was the final chapter of our story. If you have reflections or thoughts, feel free to leave a comment. Thank you for watching. And if this story spoke to you, take a look at the other videos on the channel. Until next time.